Well, hey everybody, welcome to yet another episode of Conversations on Couches. I am Steve and I'm here with Laura Quilling. Laura, tell us a little bit about your couch.
Yeah, this is my IKEA couch. It pulls out into a queen bed. It's great. I love it. It's pretty comfortable. Um, but I have lived in Davis for a little over a year now. I feel like I was really finally starting to get more involved in discovery, and then we had to take a step back from in-person meetings,
Yeah.
but I have an amazing small group that I'm a part of with Discovery, the Tuesday night group, and they are amazing and have been just a huge blessing during this time of isolation and figuring out, quote, what the new normal looks like. But
Yeah.
I am a veterinarian at UC Davis. I'm doing a veterinary dermatology residency. So I went to the University of Georgia for undergrad and then vet school. I graduated from there in 2017. So I really consider Athens, Georgia home, although my family is in Dallas, Texas. I lived in New Orleans for a year being a veterinarian there, an emergency veterinarian. And then I moved to Houston and did dermatology there for a year. And now I'm here doing dermatology. I just finished the end of, so I like a month into my second year of my residency. And it's a 3-year residency, so I'll be here for about 2 more years at least, and then we'll see what the future holds at that point.
As we all will, for sure.
Yep.
Yes, so I am super excited to chat with you today because we're going to talk a little bit about animals. Okay, so animals, but also under this bigger umbrella, this kind of first run of these conversations on couches is about this idea of beauty, right? And especially in a time right now where things kind of feel or are literally ugly, depending on how much smoke is in the air in a given day, right? I think it's important for our community to think a little bit more about how do we discover and see beauty in our everyday lives. So we're going to talk in a moment about how you see that in the animals that you work with. And I think for a lot of us, I'll just kind of speak generally, there's this like, we might have a dog or whatever, and they're kind of cute and stuff, but there is like a tremendous amount of beauty and God's creativity that is expressed through the animal world that I think a lot of us are a little bit removed from. So I'm stoked to kind of hear what your thoughts are on that. But the first question that we've been asking in these conversations is just kind of define beauty in your own words. Like, what's your sort of personal definition of that word?
Right. So when I started thinking about this, I was like, I don't know if I've ever really thought, I think, oh, it's pretty, or those that, like those are the synonyms that I put with it. And I'm like, I don't know if you actually ask me what is the definition of beauty in the dictionary, like I don't know. So I looked that up because I needed to. And then I also was like, okay, well, what does the thesaurus say synonyms are? And it was very interesting to me because I think usually I contribute beauty to physical things, right? But if you look up on thesaurus.com, at least, the synonyms wasn't pretty or gorgeous. None of those were synonyms for the word beauty. And I was like, okay, so this is automatically insinuating that there is something deeper than just the physical. And then I started thinking about, okay, well, what do I think is beautiful? What are things that I call beautiful? And I love, nature. Okay, sunsets, sunrises, those are beautiful. I think a lot of lyrics of songs are beautiful. And then so I was like, okay, well, what about those things is actually, do I feel like is beautiful? And I think ultimately it comes down to that it's things that have kind of increased value to us based on the things that kind of stir our hearts, the things that we find intriguing, or that in some way usually make us feel good about something. But it's the things that we kind of have an increased value for, at least of the things that I could see in my own life that I felt like were beautiful. And I think that's the same thing. I also thought about, okay, well, I think I have some beautiful friendships as well. And I think that those would be um, friendships that I place a lot of value in. Um, so I think I like finally came down to, okay, it's things that I find more valuable. Um, and therefore maybe they are physically prettier, but they also are things that kind of stir my heart up.
Yeah, and I'm hearing. I don't think you use this word, but I'm hearing a lot of like meaning, like these things that are meaningful
Mm-hmm.
become beautiful because of the meaning that they hold. That's fantastic. Real quick tangent. Give me a beautiful lyric. What's one of your favorite lyrics from a song?
Oh, okay. So one of my all-time favorite lyrics is from The Cave by Mumford and Sons. And it's not the long walk home that will change this heart, but
Oh,
the welcome I receive at the restart.
oh, so
Um,
good.
right, which I'm always like, are you talking about the prodigal son?
Yeah,
Marcus, do you know Jesus? So
yeah.
but so that's one. And also short plug for Need to Breathe. There's probably Need to Breathe fans within the church, but they just released a new album, and I literally sat, I think it was on Friday night, I just sat in my room with my record player on, just listening to the album. And I haven't had time to like dig into the lyrics yet, but personally, I don't know that much about actual music. I don't play instruments, like, or composure or those things. But the lyrics really speak to me. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's that album. I think it's got some great lyrics on it. So
That's great. Yeah. So I also I got a record player for my birthday this year, and my kids really enjoy listening to it as well. But and the number one thing that they request is that album "Sigh No More" by Mumford.
oh
They're
yeah,
always asking for that, so that's great. And yeah,
that's
that's a
awesome.
great song. So thanks for indulging that quick
Yeah,
tangent.
no,
But
I love.
I do again. So you are a vet. You have been working with animals for a long time. I'm guessing that part of your story even is like, I mean, you at some level you got to think that animals are pretty cool, right? To pursue this as a career. So tell us a little bit about how do you see beauty, value, meaning, all those things that you were just talking about. How do you see beauty in the animals that you work with? Um, is there a connection between the animal kingdom, as sometimes we call it, and this concept of beauty?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, as kind of an aside but related, while I was in vet school, I think it was my second year of vet school, I had this like almost existential crisis of, do I really want to be a veterinarian? I had been working to be a veterinarian at that point for like at least 6 years, like academically working towards it.
Yeah.
And I am very lucky that I had amazing, amazing friends in vet school who were also believers, and so they really encouraged me in that. And where my like kind of existential crisis came from was that I got really fixated on the fact that animals are not created in the image of God.
Hmm.
And so I could not get past this, like, well, I'm putting so much effort and so much time and so much money, we're putting so much into these creatures that Jesus didn't die for them. And so I was very much in my head about that. And eventually came to the realization, the conclusion that did Jesus die for them in the way that he died for us? Probably not the same exactly, but they are a part of creation, and the Lord did create everything purposefully to be a reflection of him, and that we are called to create all of creation, the earth and animals and people, with compassion. And so I was like, okay, and their owners have the capacity to really know Jesus. They were made in the image of God. And so for me, part of being a veterinarian is also the owners. But I think, especially as I learn more and more about the intricacies of bodies and how bodies work, like if you look at a horse and their anatomy, so they actually only stand on their middle finger. Their hoof is just their middle finger. So they're standing on a single digit.
Whoa.
It doesn't make any sense. Like,
Yeah.
that animal should not be able to support itself on one finger. And their GI tracts, like their stomachs and their colons make no sense. Like you look at them and you're like, you should not be alive because how does this work?
Yeah.
And so I think the more and more, and when you look at, other species, dogs and cats more similar to humans. And so a human bodies are insane as well. And they're so intricate and so beautiful that certainly it's easier to compare to them, but just the more you learn about different species and how they are able to survive and thrive with very different bodies and things that don't make sense, is that feels very purposeful. And I think, especially from being a veterinarian standpoint, I work primarily with small animals, so dogs and cats, but I do see horses a fair amount. I worked with a leopard at a zoo once.
Whoa.
Yeah, so they are under anesthesia when we work with
I hope so.
them awake. Yes, which honestly, at that point, I was like, okay, this is a big cat. I know what to do for a cat. But I get questions about squirrels sometimes. One day, somebody came in and asked my faculty about mites on bees, and I was like, oh, I know nothing about mites on bees,
Whoa.
but sure. So just things that you're like, oh, there's so many different things, but primarily working with small animals who are generally owned by someone that are often considered family members. I get to see a lot of the relationships of animals and people. And it's interesting, because I have my own relationship with my own pet, but I get a bit more of a front row seat to other people's relationships with their pet, and seeing the way that people value those relationships and the way that they rely on those pets for things that, as a believer, I'm like, oh, well, this is, an attribute of God that he shows us through animals, that maybe they don't recognize that, but it's neat to get to at least watch it from the, first or second row as it's happening in their lives. But yeah, I think a lot of it for me, especially working with animals, is the human animal bond and the relationship there. And then I really, really enjoy, there's an aspect called One Health, where looking at that the health of humans, the health of animals, and the health of the environment are all related. Yeah. And so I think, especially from kind of a being good stewards of creation, and looking at creation in all aspects of it, of how does it reflect God and how does it show us who God is, that it's neat to put all of those things together. And I just happen to get to be with the animals more. But I think another beautiful thing is, usually most animals, not all of them, but most of them want to be petted. They want to be with you. And so it's just a like really sweet reminder, and something that is enjoyable about going to work. And I think also, when not everybody gets to be super passionate about what their, quote, job is. And I am thankful that I do get to be super passionate about that. And that even on the bad days, I get a little bit of a glimmer of, maybe beauty and who God is by getting to interact with them. But certainly their bodies, our bodies, don't work in ways that make a lot of sense. Yeah. And so I think, from a medical standpoint, like that in and of itself is like awe-inspiring, which for me, I feel like, it plays in with the kind of definition of beauty and being meaningful. And
yeah. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. One as you were talking, one thing that I was thinking about is, and I don't know if you've spent any time with this, but so in the book of Jonah in particular, mm-hmm. there's this whole thing, like, Jonah's supposed to go to Nineveh and like,
mm-hmm. and he's running away and
and sort of, call them to repentance or whatever. And they do. And there's at least 2 times, I think in chapter 3 and chapter 4 of Jonah, where it says the whole city of Nineveh repented and the animals. or the whole city put on sackcloth and ashes and the animals. And so there's this sense in which God wanted to save Nineveh. I think the big picture thing there is because he's trying to show Israel that, hey, my family's bigger than just you guys. I care about these people too. But he cares. It says a couple times he cared about the city and all the animals in the city, and that kind of, I think, speaks to what you were talking about, which is, yes, okay, maybe animals don't bear the image of God the way that human beings do, but, and I think for a lot of people there can be this big disconnect between us and the rest of creation, but they are part of this creation, and God does care about his creation, and so therefore God would care about these animals. Anyway, just kind of an interesting sort of random thing from the book of Jonah.
No, that is like, I wish you'd been there my second year of vet school. Tell me that then. But
So you've kind of led us to this point already, but just to give you a little bit more space to answer this question, how, maybe not so much even for yourself, but like for me, just a regular dude who has a tiny neurotic dog, like how do I experience beauty through animals and through God's creation? Particularly, I mean, I get it, like if I go watch the sunset into the Pacific Ocean, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this got to come from God, like how else do you get
right.
this moment? But I think with at least for me, with the animal thing, like there's still a little bit of a jump there. So like how to teach us how to experience beauty through animals?
Well, hopefully I can. Yeah. So again, when I was thinking about these questions and I was like, okay, so I was thinking about my interactions personally with animals and how do which ones do I feel like are beautiful? Like what relationship with an animal would I consider beautiful? And I realized I've lived in 5 states in 5 years, and my only consistent roommate, my longest roommate ever, is my cat. She is not very nice. She is, honestly, most people wouldn't put up with her, but she is she's my support system, truly. I have an amazing family. I have amazing friends. I have amazing people I can talk to. But at the end of the day, I come home to a mean cat. and I love her dearly. And I think in the times, and she's seen me through some pretty terrible times. My year that I was an ER doctor was absolutely horrendous. And I knew that I could always come home to her, and she likes me enough. And she can sense when I'm not doing well, and she kind of will curl up and just purr on my chest. Or I was out of town for about a week and I came back, and as soon as I came back, she was like glued to me. She never wanted to be gone. And I was thinking about it more and more, and I was like, I feel like this is a really like beautiful reminder that this is how the Lord is. Like if I leave, he's still clinging. He's still right there. And when things are hard, he is there ready to be with me. When things are good, he is there ready to be with me. And he's the constant through all of those things. And I think I got to experience that through my cat, which I'm very thankful for. I hope other people get to experience that with their pets as well, particularly because that's most of what I do, and hopefully I enable people to get to do that. But I think as far as the way I experience it mostly with animals is through relationships with them. But certainly I think you can also look out the window and see maybe maybe you have a hummingbird feeder and there's hummingbirds outside, and just kind of appreciating some of that stillness and that quietness of that hummingbird being there. And does that show you like, oh, the Lord is paying attention to the things going on in my life, because I was thinking about how I wanted to see this animal, and like now here it is. Or I think too, one of the things that I think about a lot when I think of like imagery of animals that are beautiful, I think of like horses running through fields. And for whatever reason, to me, that's just like the most majestic image.
Yeah.
um, and I used to work with horses a lot. I work with them less than I used to, but they're really powerful. They are, very, very strong. And they can do quite a bit of damage if um, they want to. And I think when I think of horses and how they remind me of the Lord, I think of like, okay, well, the Lord is so powerful and he's showing us how he's able to use his power, but he can also contain his power and use it at the right moment, and those sorts of things of, showing us his attributes. Um, but personally, I primarily see Jesus in pets and the relationship with them. But.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. There's like so many more things that I would love to ask you about, but our time is up. So thank you, Laura, for joining us on Couches, for sharing a little bit of your passion for animals, helping us see beauty there, and even connecting that to how we understand God. That's some great stuff to think about, and hopefully leads to some fun conversations for you with other people here down
Yeah,
the
I
road.
love talking about animals, so
That's great. All right.
hopefully I
Well,
love
thanks,
it,
Laura.
right?